Is this kayak actually better than all these tiny boats? Let's talk about it. You may not know this, but I bought a kayak charter company that came with a YouTube channel I was actually paid to build in the beginning by the original owner of this charter business. After a successful short few months during the spring and summer, the owner, also my best friend, decided this needed to be my business as he needed to do other ventures, help his son with his new local window tint shop in Panama City Beach, and doing some boat flipping on his own. Thus, my love of kayaks, these kayaks specifically, was born. I always knew how awesome they were, but I didn't realize the full extent of their functionalities until, well, they were mine. Stay tuned though, because the answer to today's video might shock you. Anyway, my fleet of kayaks are all Old Town Sportsman Autopilot 120s. They are basically tiny boats, as they're one of the widest kayaks on the market with a pontoon designed hull, making it ultra stable for stand-up fishing and cruising, similar to the Pond Prowler. They're also trolling motor powered kayaks from the factory, like most of our tiny boats. Most of our tiny boats are trolling motor powered. These kayaks are absolutely fishable, and they're big enough to carry a bunch of gear, including tackle boxes, backpacks, coolers, live bait. I mean, I've hauled what feels like a whole city some days on my kayak. And they're truly wild kayaks, because they're powered by the Minn Kota iPilot trolling motor system. Therefore, these have what every tiny boat owner wants, yet few own: spot lock. I drive these kayaks exclusively via remote and will hit speeds up to 4 to 5 miles per hour, depending on wind and current. These kayaks will do everything our tiny boats will do, except carry one other person. On paper, these autopilot kayaks seem like a real competitor for the tiny boat market. But are they? Let's take the most popular tiny boat, for example, and that's the Pond Prowler 10, and use it as what we compare these kayaks against. So let's start with the weight. The Pond Prowler 10 weighs about 138 pounds. That is the hull only, not including any sort of motor. So 138 pounds is what the Pond Prowler weighs. The max weight capacity on the Pond Prowler is 525 pounds, and that is for 2 people, motor, and gear. Now, the Old Town Sportsman, on the other hand, is 119 pounds with the hull before the motor. These kayaks do come with motors and they weigh about 24 pounds. So we're looking at a 156 pound package. So the kayak is only a hair lighter than the much bigger Pond Prowler. While the Old Town Sportsman max weight is only 415 pounds, 110 pounds lighter, the person limit is only 1. So really, you get way more weight per person. Now let's move on to the features, starting with the Pond Prowler. The Pond Prowler does have a bow mount trolling motor option with a plug. It's pre-wired through the hull to plug in a bow mounted trolling motor. It also has 2 rod holders from the factory. It does have a transom rated for a 3.5 horsepower outboard. It fits in the bed of most trucks. It also comes with 2 seats for 2 people, unless you get the 8-foot model. That's the solo model. And you have ample room for gear, cooler, and casting while standing if you want to. When I was fishing solo on my Pond Prowler, I'd walk back and forth on the deck because I had that much room. Of course, if you're by yourself. Now let's move into the features of the Old Town Sportsman. The bow mount trolling motor is included in the purchase of the kayak. It comes with 4 factory rod holders. However, it does not have any sort of transom for an outboard, but what it does support is the ability to put on an electric outboard from Newport vessels. They have an outboard kayak motor. I believe it's like 3 horsepower equivalent or so, but other than that, no real outboards can go on this kayak. It also fits in the bed of most trucks, although it is 2 foot longer at 12 foot, but the kayak has spot lock, autopilot, cruise control, and many more features, including hands-free fishing with the foot rudder control. The Pond Prowler has no rudder, which can be an issue. I had to add my own. The Old Town Sportsman also comes pre-drilled for electronics, including graphs, so you don't really need to put any holes in your hull. It also has dry storage and in-hull storage, although most of the in-hull storage on the kayak is simply used for wires and batteries. Clearly, the Pond Prowler allows an additional person, and if not, it allows way more room to move about. Plus, you're also sitting in a higher, more comfortable position. while the kayak offers way more tech, creature comforts, and higher speeds with improved handling. However, there's no real option for an outboard on the kayak as well. Overall, the Pond Prowler may be one of the best tiny boats ever made. As the Old Town Sportsman is so advanced, many people also consider it a tiny boat, beyond a kayak. I would have to agree with that, especially due to the autopilot motor. Truly insane tech packed into a kayak. However, I've intentionally left out the most important part of this entire video, and that is going to be the price. The Pond Prowler 10-foot model, brand new, is going to run you about $800. It's actually $750 on sale for this holiday season. Or you can get the 8-foot solo version for only $630. Now, the Pond Prowler does not come with a trolling motor like the kayak, so we do have to factor in the price of a trolling motor. And I have a Newport Vessels saltwater 46-pound thrust trolling motor, and that ran me about $180. So right under $1,000 for the 10-foot, two-person, ultra-stable fishing boat with the same pound thrust comparable trolling motor, about $1,000. Less if you get the solo 8-foot version. $1,000 for a fishing boat. Not bad. Now let's talk about the price of the Old Town Sportsman. And that's going to run you about $4,500. And that $4,500 does not include a battery with the kayak, which will run you another couple hundred. And it doesn't even come with a kayak paddle, which I thought was absolutely bonkers. But as you can see, the price difference is night and day. $1,000 versus $4,500. You know, price-wise, the Pond Prowler truly is the king of tiny boats. However, the iPilot motors for the kayaks are $2,000 by themselves. I had to replace a remote a client lost, they paid for it, but it was also $250 just to replace the remote. So these are really, really expensive little boats. And as you can see, this is a monster price difference, and you're paying for the autopilot functionality. Yes, Old Town Sportsman has lifetime warranties on their hulls. They're some of the most bulletproof, stable kayaks on planet Earth, and the trolling motor really is an absolute game changer. Being able to use it via hands-free fishing with the foot control rudders, and spot lock being an absolute, that's the number one reason I have the kayaks. But I bought the Pond Prowler for my wife and I before I even started filming it for YouTube. I paid $300 for a used Pond Prowler. Now, I bought the kayaks as a business. I probably never would have spent the money if I didn't get it as an investment, simply due to the major price difference. A used Old Town Autopilot will still run $3,500, but people usually have them modded out, so they're still really expensive. Now, Pond Prowlers are getting more expensive on the second hand, but man, $1,000 for a Pond Prowler with a trolling motor versus $4,500 for an Old Town Sportsman. As you can see, although the autopilot motor just absolutely smokes any trolling motor you can get for these tiny boats out of the water, listen, it's hard to beat $1,000 for a two-man ultra-stable fishing boat. Pond Prowler still reigns king as the #1 tiny boat on the market. If you are interested in learning more about these Old Town Sportsman autopilots, watching me catch the big fish possible, and go on general adventures as well as modification videos very similar to this channel, you can check out my kayak channel, 316 Kayak Adventures. I will link it in the below. Same format, same everything, it just takes place in the kayak world. Hope you enjoyed, happy boating, tight lines, and God bless.